thing that I want to kind of tackle today is the idea about ideas. And it seems like a weird concept, but there's actually a conflict that emerges psychologically. And I want to try to go over that today and explain a little bit of what I'm talking about. So let's draw an idea. Okay, so this is going to be our idea here. He's not going to be happy. And so let's actually look at the timeline of this idea first. This is actually not just an idea, it's an ideal. Ideal. So let's kind of look at a timeline first. This usually takes some time because a lot of things goes into this idea. A lot of individual, let's say this, attributes. That constitutes this. There's perceptions. Emotions. And when I say this, it could be perceptions of self, worldviews, other people, and so on and so forth. But these things, and well, it could be thoughts too. Let's not forget that. But this ideal doesn't happen necessarily overnight. So this is kind of the continuum. That substantiates these claims are right. Okay, so these are assumed to be right. And consequently good. Okay. Okay, so what happens here? So we have this ideal. Let's give him a sword. Because what's going to happen is he's going to battle. With this, which is called, we're going to call him not an ideal, but the anti-idea. So this is the anti-idea. And this guy, he may formulate on a much smaller, let's actually just say that this is a much smaller time span, because it's going to be relatively novel compared to this. Okay, so let's give this guy some eyes. We'll call that the first one, and this is the second one. And then there could also be some, let's say, some potential ideas that aren't necessarily being attended to over here. And we'll call those appropriately potentials. Okay. So what happens in this process exactly? When we have this ideal thing, okay, which is actually a culmination of ideas, but it's going against this other ideal, okay? So what necessarily happens? Anxiety. Okay, anxiety. Now, it's also important to notice that when we make decisions, and this is kind of the decision-making process, yeah, it's deciding something, whatever that something may be. There is an expectation for optimization. So let's just write that. Expectation for optimization. Optimization. Okay. Well, sometimes things are not optimal, right? Whether we decide this particular thought or any of the potential other thoughts, they seem to conflict one another, let's say. So what happens? Increased anxiety. And pardon me, but my pen is not working great. And why? So why do we get more anxious? Let's just say because things tend not to be optimal. Optimal. Okay. So let's see if we can actually kind of formulate a real world relationship and relationship a real world example of how this may go in terms of relationships. Okay, so let's say that we have our thought. Okay. And we're just going to say this is believed to be the good idea. Okay, perception. This is supposedly good. This is the one that is, let's say, favored. This one is favored. And it can be for any realm of reasons, but and T sub 1 will just to be continuing, consistent. I mean, then we have this other thought, this deflated one. We could even draw our little sword. And this one is believed. This one isn't actually an interference, so it's kind of perceived to be a bad thought. Okay. And this one is less favored. Okay. So this one is actually, let's think about why we may favor something. Okay. And specifically, since we're going to talk about relational issues, let's talk about something like this. The idea of hoping the relationship lasts, the idea of loving someone, hopefully, um, and general just valuing the person. Okay. And so what this one may represent is more of the self-honesty, let's say. So let's say that let's actually give this is recognition of, let's say, passive aggressive behaviors. Passive aggressive behaviors. Okay. Now, so this one, when you, let's say, come to terms or realize or something like that. Okay, so this is going to be, this less favored idea is going to be the more analytical, let's say honest, because you're being honest with your own perceptions as they appear, and let's say this truth claims. Truth claims. Oh, guys, I'm sorry. Okay, and so these two entities appear to be mutually exclusive. Okay. And so there's conflict. The conflict causes anxiety. So let's actually, you think this communication between the favored thought and the less favored thought, what do you think that could necessarily be? Let's give it a name. We're going to call it denial. Because this one is denying this one any kind of formal representation, any kind of formal psychological representation or ability to be any kind of good, positive attribute. And so when we have this hope, value, love, and so forth be antithetical to any kind of necessary truth claim that we understand is the best of our perceptible ability, what does this yield? Naivety. Okay, well, naivety is not necessarily good. So this is not, let's say this is not optimal. Okay. And so this, look, what do you think is going to be the consequence of something not being optimal when the expectation is to be optimal? We're going to have increased anxiety. Now, look at something else. When you have two emerging things, or one emerging thing that conflicts with something that is necessarily older and been there for a while, there is actually some things that we need to go over here. So this causes emotional, cognitive dissonance. So let's actually underline this. What is dissonance per se? Let's define it as lack of clarity. Lack of clarity. When we have a lack of clarity, that's also not optimal. So what does this yield? doubt, confusion, which has the proclivity to, let's say, pain, psychological pain or emotional pain. This the idea is very generically we're going to call pain. So in the process of wanting to reduce pain because of a preferred ideal, we actually kind of induce pain. Let's look a little bit more at how this happens. Let's actually write it up here. Dissonance causes denial. Denial also causes dissonance. So we're in this cyclical psychological catastrophe in our attempt to reduce pain. Now, this isn't to suggest that we don't necessarily have any control over what we think to some degree, but as you'll see in later videos, this is actually one part of many layers of emotional reaction